You know, every single complex organism, and that absolutely includes us, has this incredible internal transport network, and it's working tirelessly 24/7. So today, we're going to explore that very system, the body's massive internal highway and the amazing, powerful pump that keeps everything on the move. Honestly, the best way to really get your head around the circulatory system is to picture a massive, super intricate highway. Its one critical job: deliver the essentials, like oxygen and nutrients, to every single cell, from the tip of your brain to the end of your toes, and then haul away all the waste. It is the ultimate logistics operation happening inside you right now. So here's our game plan. First, we'll map out that internal highway and its main parts. Then we're going to meet the powerful pump right at the center of it all, the heart. We'll decode the heart's rhythm, take a look at the precious cargo it's moving around, which is blood, of course, and finally, we'll talk about how you can keep your own personal highway in peak condition. All right, let's dive into section 1, the body's internal highway. Just like any road system out there, our circulatory network needs some key infrastructure to even work. Without it, the whole thing would just grind to a halt. It really just boils down to 3 critical things. First, you've got to have a pump. That's the heart, right? Providing all the pressure to get things moving. Second, you need the roads themselves. These are the vessels, the arteries that carry blood away from the heart, and the veins that bring it right back. And third, you need some traffic control. That's where the valves come in. They're basically one-way doors that make sure blood never, ever flows backward. Okay, so now let's zoom in on the absolute engine of this highway. Section 2 is all about that powerful pump, the heart. This thing powers the entire system, beating nonstop for our whole lives. It's incredible. So the mammalian heart has these 4 distinct chambers. Think of the 2 on top, the atria, as the receiving rooms. Their walls are pretty thin because really their job is just to collect the blood and give it a little push down into the lower chambers. Now, those lower chambers, the ventricles, they are the real powerhouses. They've got these thick, muscular walls that do all the heavy lifting, pumping blood out to the lungs and the entire rest of the body. Now, a really key feature of the heart is the septum. It's this thick wall of muscle that runs right down the middle, acting like a super strict divider. And its whole job, which is crucial, is to keep the oxygen-rich blood on one side totally separate from the oxygen-poor blood on the other. This separation is what makes our whole system so unbelievably efficient. All right, pop quiz time. I've got a question for you. We know the ventricles have thick walls, but the wall of the left ventricle is way thicker than the right one. Any ideas why that might be? Just take a second and think about it. Well, think about it. The right ventricle only has to generate enough oomph to send blood on a quick trip next door to the lungs. But the left ventricle? It has the massive job of pumping with enough force to send blood to your entire body. That journey is way longer and has more resistance, so it just needs a much, much more powerful muscle. Makes sense, right? And that powerful pump brings us perfectly into section 3. The heart's power isn't just about raw strength, it's all about its perfect, never-ending rhythm. So let's break down the mechanics behind that classic lub-dub sound. Okay, so this whole cycle is what creates the heartbeat. First, the atria squeeze and push blood into the ventricles. Next, the ventricles contract, and that pressure slams the first set of valves shut. That's your lub sound. This big squeeze forces blood out into the body, and finally, as the ventricles relax, a second set of valves snaps shut, and that makes the dub sound. And then it all starts over. Lub-dub, lub-dub. It's literally the sound of perfect traffic control. And here's where it gets really cool, because this connects directly to something you can feel on your own body right now. When you check your pulse, what you're actually feeling is the physical result of this cardiac cycle. It's that pressure wave, that rhythmic stretch of your arteries as the left ventricle powerfully pumps blood out into the highway system. All right, moving on to section 4, we've got the highway, we've got the pump, but what about the vehicles on that highway? What exactly is this essential cargo we call blood? Yeah, blood isn't just some simple red liquid. Not even close. It's actually this incredibly complex, living tissue made up of all these different parts, and each one has a highly specialized job to do. So let's break down who the key players are. You've got plasma, that's the liquid part that carries everything from CO2 to hormones. Then you have the famous red blood cells. They're basically little oxygen taxis, using a protein called hemoglobin to get the job done. Platelets are these tiny cell fragments that rush to the scene of any injury to start the clotting process. And finally, you've got white blood cells, your immune system's security force, either gobbling up invaders or creating antibodies to fight them off. And that whole clotting thing, it's seriously amazing. When you get a cut, this whole chain reaction kicks off that turns a protein in your plasma called fibrinogen into these insoluble threads of fibrin. These threads form a little net, like a mesh, that traps blood cells, plugs up the leak to stop the bleeding, and, importantly, creates a barrier to keep nasty germs out. Okay, here we are at our final section, maintaining your internal highway. We've seen how incredible this whole system is, so it only makes sense to talk about how to take care of it and, prevent things from going wrong. So, coronary heart disease, that's basically when the highways feeding the heart muscle itself start getting clogged up. The main risk factors kind of fall into a few buckets. Diet is a huge one, especially a lot of saturated fat and salt. Lifestyle choices are another biggie, things like smoking or not being active. And of course, there's biology. Your genetics, your age, and your sex can also play a role. All right, one last question for you, and this one's all about taking positive action. We all know exercise is good for us, but how exactly does it help maintain our cardiovascular highway and cut down the risk of heart disease? It's pretty straightforward, really. Regular exercise is literally like taking your heart to the gym. It strengthens that cardiac muscle, so every single pump becomes more efficient. And that increased efficiency also helps lower your overall blood pressure, which reduces the strain on your entire network of arteries. It's a win-win. So, what's the bottom line here? What are the big things to remember? Well, that the heart's cardiac cycle is this masterpiece of timing, and the love-dub sound we hear is all thanks to the valves closing. And on a practical note, exercise makes this whole system stronger, and a healthy lifestyle is simply the best defense against getting those arteries clogged up. Before we finish up, I want to leave you with a number. Just think about this for a second. Over 100,000. That's on average how many times your heart beats every single day. Just relentlessly pumping, keeping your internal highway flowing perfectly. And that really brings us to the final question, doesn't it? With your heart putting in that much work for you day in and day out, the real question is, what are you doing to maintain your internal highway? Thanks for tuning in.